What if I told you that thousands of families once had a food system in their own backyard that produced fish, vegetables, herbs, fruit, fertilizer, and even clean water, all from a single pond? Imagine stepping outside your back door, catching dinner fresh from the water, harvesting leafy greens growing along the banks, collecting eggs from ducks paddling across the surface, and watering your garden without ever turning on a hose. It sounds almost too good to be true. Yet, for centuries, this was simply everyday life in many parts of the world. Somewhere along the way, this incredibly productive system was largely forgotten, replaced by lawns that consume water, chemical fertilizers that deplete the soil, and grocery stores that leave us dependent on long supply chains. But today, we're uncovering one of history's greatest gardening secrets, the ancient backyard pond system that seemed to create an endless supply of food. Welcome back to Daily Garden Gate, where we explore timeless gardening wisdom, practical growing techniques, and sustainable methods that help you produce more food naturally. If you're passionate about self-sufficiency, backyard farming, and discovering forgotten gardening practices that still work today, you're in the right place. Be sure to subscribe and join our growing community because every week we share ideas that can transform ordinary backyards into thriving food-producing landscapes. When most people picture a backyard pond, they imagine a decorative feature filled with colorful koi, a small fountain, and perhaps a few water lilies floating peacefully on the surface. While those ponds can certainly be beautiful, ancient food ponds served an entirely different purpose. Every part of the pond was designed to contribute to food production. Nothing was wasted. The fish fertilized the water. Aquatic plants filtered impurities while producing edible harvests. Ducks controlled insects and weeds while adding valuable nutrients. Fruit trees shaded the edges, reducing evaporation while producing abundant crops. Even the nutrient-rich mud collected at the bottom became one of the most effective natural fertilizers imaginable. This wasn't a single invention created by one civilization. Similar systems appeared independently across Asia, Europe, Africa, and parts of the Americas because people discovered the same simple truth. When nature is allowed to work as a complete ecosystem, it becomes incredibly productive. Instead of fighting nature, they learned to work with it. They observed how ponds supported countless forms of life without synthetic fertilizers or pesticides, and adapted those natural processes into reliable food systems that often became more productive with each passing year. One of the greatest advantages of these pond systems was resilience. During dry seasons, the pond stored precious water that could irrigate nearby crops. During heavy rains, it collected runoff that might otherwise erode valuable topsoil. Fish continued growing beneath the surface regardless of weather, while moisture surrounding the pond created a cooler microclimate that protected vegetables during periods of intense heat. Long before modern irrigation systems existed, these ponds acted as natural reservoirs that stabilized food production throughout changing seasons. The remarkable productivity of these ponds wasn't based on expensive technology. It came from understanding relationships within nature. Tiny organisms fed insects. Insects became food for fish. Fish waste nourished aquatic plants. Decaying plant matter enriched the pond floor. Nutrient-rich water irrigated nearby gardens. Garden plants produced scraps that could be composted or returned to the pond, completing the cycle. Every element supported another. Instead of constantly adding fertilizers and chemicals from outside sources, the system largely sustained itself through natural biological processes. Historical records reveal that many farming communities considered their ponds just as valuable as their crop fields. In some regions, families carefully maintained ponds that had supplied food for generations. These weren't emergency food sources used only during difficult times. They formed an essential part of everyday life. Fresh fish provided valuable protein. Water chestnuts, lotus roots, and edible aquatic greens added diversity to family meals. Frogs and beneficial insects helped keep pest populations under control. Even birds visiting the ponds contributed by consuming insects that might otherwise damage nearby crops. As industrial agriculture expanded during the 20th century, these integrated backyard systems gradually disappeared from many communities. Lawns replaced productive landscapes. Fish were purchased from supermarkets instead of harvested from home ponds. Chemical fertilizers substituted for naturally cycling nutrients. Irrigation relied increasingly on pumps and municipal water rather than stored rainwater. The knowledge wasn't necessarily wrong or outdated, it simply became overshadowed by modern convenience and changing lifestyles. Ironically, many gardeners today are rediscovering these ancient principles because they solve several modern challenges at once. Rising food prices, increasing water restrictions, declining soil quality, and growing interest in sustainable living have encouraged people to look back at methods that worked long before synthetic chemicals existed. What seemed old-fashioned is becoming surprisingly relevant again. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of these backyard pond systems is how much food they could produce from relatively small spaces. Even a modest pond measuring just a few meters across could support fish, aquatic vegetables, beneficial wildlife, and irrigation for surrounding garden beds. Unlike many traditional gardens that require frequent watering during hot weather, the pond itself acted as a constant moisture reserve. Plants growing nearby often experience healthier growth simply because of the increased humidity and improved soil moisture around the water's edge. The pond also became a magnet for biodiversity. Dragonflies hunted mosquitoes before they became a nuisance. Frogs consumed slugs and harmful insects that threatened vegetables. Bees visited flowering plants surrounding the water, improving pollination throughout the garden. Birds helped control caterpillars and beetles while adding life and movement to the landscape. Every season brought new activity, creating a balanced environment where pests rarely gained complete control because natural predators were always present. Another forgotten benefit was soil fertility. Every year, nutrient-rich sediment accumulated at the bottom of the pond. Instead of viewing this as waste, experienced gardeners periodically removed small amounts and spread it around fruit trees, vegetable beds, and berry bushes. This dark organic material contained minerals, beneficial microorganisms, and decomposed plant matter that improved soil structure while feeding crops naturally. Many considered pond mud to be among the finest fertilizers available, requiring no factory production or chemical additives. The beauty of this ancient system is that it doesn't demand hundreds of acres or expensive equipment. Its greatest strength lies in efficiency. Every square foot performs multiple functions at once. The pond stores water, raises fish, supports wildlife, produces fertilizer, moderates temperatures, and enhances surrounding gardens simultaneously. Few modern backyard features can match that level of productivity. Over the years, many people came to believe that food production required separate systems, one area for vegetables, another for irrigation, another for compost, and another for livestock. Ancient gardeners saw things differently. They understood that when these elements were connected, each became stronger because every part benefited from the others. Their backyards weren't divided into isolated sections, but woven together into living ecosystems. Today, scientists often describe these ideas using terms like ecological gardening, regenerative agriculture, or integrated food systems. Yet centuries ago, families simply called it common sense. They observed nature carefully, copied what worked, and refined those practices over generations. The result was a remarkably productive backyard that required fewer outside inputs while delivering harvests throughout much of the year. In the next part of this video, we'll explore exactly how these incredible pond systems function day by day. You'll discover the fish species that worked best, the edible plants that thrived in and around the water, how ducks multiplied the system's productivity, and why each component made the others even stronger. Once you understand how these ancient ecosystems operated, you'll begin to see your own backyard in a completely new way. The real genius of the ancient backyard pond wasn't simply that it held water. Its true power came from the way every living thing supported something else. Unlike modern gardens where each element often stands alone, these ponds functioned as complete ecosystems. Fish, plants, insects, birds, beneficial bacteria, and even nearby fruit trees all played a role in keeping the system healthy. Once established, the pond required surprisingly little intervention because nature handled much of the work. Instead of constantly fixing problems, gardeners focused on maintaining balance. At the center of the system were the fish. Species such as carp, tilapia, and warm climates, catfish, and other hardy freshwater fish converted naturally available food into a dependable source of protein. They fed on algae, aquatic insects, fallen leaves, plant material, and microorganisms living in the water. Some species even helped control mosquito larvae, making the pond more comfortable to live around while producing food at the same time. As the fish grew, they continuously released nutrient-rich waste into the water, creating a natural fertilizer that fueled the entire ecosystem. Those nutrients didn't go to waste. Aquatic plants eagerly absorbed them, preventing excess algae from taking over the pond. Plants like watercress, water spinach, or suitable, duck potato, cattails, lotus, and watermint thrived in nutrient-rich conditions. Many of these plants were harvested regularly for food while continuing to grow throughout the season. Their roots also filtered the water, helping to keep it clearer and healthier for the fish. It was a perfect partnership. Fish fed the plants, and the plants cleaned the water for the fish. Floating plants also played an important role. Water lilies provided shade that helped regulate water temperature during hot summer days. Cooler water holds more oxygen, creating a healthier environment for fish while slowing excessive algae growth. Their broad leaves also gave young fish places to hide from predators. Even though water lilies are often planted for their beauty today, ancient gardeners appreciated them just as much for their practical benefits they provided. Around the edges of the pond, another layer of productivity came to life. Moist soil created ideal conditions for vegetables and herbs that enjoy consistent moisture. Chives, mint, parsley, celery, rhubarb, and many leafy greens often performed exceptionally well near the water's edge. Since the surrounding soil stayed cooler and retained moisture longer than other parts of the garden, plants experienced less stress during periods of intense heat. This meant healthier growth with less frequent watering. Fruit trees were commonly planted nearby, but not so close that their roots would damage the pond banks. Apples, pears, figs, mulberries, plums, peaches, and other suitable trees benefited from the higher humidity surrounding the water. Their branches cast light shade across portions of the pond during the hottest hours of the day, reducing evaporation. At the same time, fallen leaves and occasional fruit provided food for insects and microorganisms that eventually became part of the pond's natural food web. One of the most fascinating additions to many traditional pond systems were ducks. While many people assume ducks simply swim on the surface, they actually performed several valuable jobs. They eagerly consumed insects, mosquito larvae, snails, and weeds that might otherwise become problems. Their movement helped stir the water gently, improving oxygen exchange, while their manure added nutrients that supported aquatic plant growth. In return, the ponds gave ducks clean water for drinking, swimming, and natural foraging. Families also benefited from a steady supply of eggs and, in some cases, meat. Beneficial insects flourished in these healthy pond environments. Dragonflies became some of the most valuable allies. Their larvae developed underwater, feeding on mosquito larvae before emerging as adults that continued hunting flying insects. Frogs settled around the pond's edges, quietly reducing populations of slugs, flies, beetles, and other garden pests. Birds visited frequently to drink, bathe, and feed on insects, creating another layer of natural pest control without the need for chemical sprays. Perhaps the most overlooked workers were the billions of microscopic organisms living beneath the surface. Beneficial bacteria continuously broke down dead leaves, fish waste, and organic matter into nutrients that plants could absorb. Tiny crustaceans and microorganisms fed young fish while recycling nutrients throughout the pond. Although invisible to the naked eye, these microscopic communities formed the foundation of the entire system. Without them, the pond could never maintain its remarkable productivity. Water itself became one of the greatest harvests. During dry weather, gardeners could draw nutrient-rich pond water to irrigate vegetable beds. Unlike plain tap water, pond water often contained dissolved nutrients and beneficial microbes that supported plant growth. Tomatoes, peppers, squash, beans, corn, cucumbers, and many other vegetables frequently responded with vigorous growth after being watered with this naturally enriched supply. Every bucket carried far more than moisture. It delivered fertility directly to the soil. The pond banks also became ideal locations for flowering plants that attracted pollinators. Bees, butterflies, hoverflies, and other beneficial insects visited throughout the growing season, increasing pollination across the entire garden. Better pollination meant larger harvests of tomatoes, cucumbers, squash, melons, berries, and fruit trees. Simply by maintaining a healthy pond ecosystem, gardeners indirectly improve production throughout their entire property. One reason these systems endured for generations was that they wasted almost nothing. Vegetable trimmings could feed compost piles or certain fish species. Fallen leaves became future fertilizer. Rainwater naturally replenished the pond. Aquatic plants removed excess nutrients while producing edible harvests. Even pond sediment eventually found its way back into garden beds, enriching the soil for future crops. Every output from one part of the system became an input somewhere else. This efficiency made backyard pond systems surprisingly resilient. If one crop had a poor season, fish continued growing beneath the surface. If drought stressed upland vegetables, moisture around the pond still supported herbs and leafy greens. If insects became abundant, frogs, birds, fish, and dragonflies usually responded by increasing their feeding activity. Nature constantly adjusted itself, reducing the need for human intervention. Perhaps that's the greatest lesson modern gardeners can learn from these ancient systems. Instead of trying to eliminate every insect, sterilize every surface, or control every detail, successful gardeners encourage diversity. The more different forms of life the pond supported, the stronger and more stable the ecosystem became. Every new species added another layer of resilience. Today, researchers studying regenerative agriculture often arrive at the same conclusion our ancestors discovered centuries ago. Healthy ecosystems are incredibly productive because every organism contributes to the whole. The ancient backyard pond wasn't successful because it relied on one miracle plant or one special fish. It worked because dozens of natural relationships functioned together in harmony. For families seeking greater food security, lower gardening costs, and healthier soil, these forgotten ideas are becoming more valuable than ever. A carefully designed pond doesn't just produce fish, it becomes the beating heart of an entire food-producing landscape. In the final part of this video, we'll show you how to recreate this forgotten backyard pond system using modern materials and practical techniques. You'll learn the best location for your pond, the ideal size for beginners, common mistakes to avoid, and simple ways to turn even a small backyard into a thriving ecosystem that provides food, supports wildlife, and grows more productive with every passing year. The exciting part about this forgotten backyard pond system is that you don't need a massive farm or generations of experience to put its principles into practice. While ancient families often built large ponds to support entire households, even a modest backyard can benefit from the same ideas. The goal isn't to copy history exactly. Instead, it's to recreate the natural relationships that made those old systems so productive. Whether your pond is 50 square feet or 500, the same ecological principles apply. The first step is choosing the right location. Ideally, your pond should receive around 6 hours of sunlight each day while also benefiting from partial afternoon shade during the hottest months. Too much shade can limit the growth of aquatic plants, while full sun all day may encourage excessive algae growth and increase evaporation. Positioning the pond near your vegetable garden also makes it easier to use nutrient-rich water for irrigation whenever your crops need it. Before digging, spend some time observing how water naturally moves across your yard. During heavy rain, notice where water collects and where it flows. Ancient gardeners always worked with the landscape rather than against it. They often located ponds where rainwater naturally gathered, allowing the pond to refill with minimal effort. This simple observation can reduce the amount of supplemental watering your pond requires throughout the year. Depth is another important consideration. A shallow pond warms quickly but may overheat during summer, while a deeper section provides cooler water where fish can retreat during periods of intense heat or freezing temperatures.
A pond with varying depths also supports a greater variety of plants and wildlife. Shallow shelves around the edges are perfect for aquatic plants, while deeper areas create safe zones for fish and help stabilize water temperatures. If you're just getting started, resist the temptation to stock the pond with too many fish right away. One of the biggest mistakes beginners make is adding more fish than the ecosystem can naturally support. Ancient ponds became productive because they developed gradually. Beneficial bacteria established themselves, aquatic plants matured, insects colonized the water, and only then did fish populations expand. Patience creates a healthier and more stable ecosystem than rushing the process. Choosing the right plants is equally important. Include a combination of submerged plants, floating plants, and marginal plants growing along the edges. Each group performs a different function. Some oxygenate the water, others provide shade, while others absorb nutrients and stabilize the pond banks. Together, they create a balanced environment that supports fish while naturally keeping the water cleaner. As your pond matures, you'll notice wildlife arriving on its own. Dragonflies may appear within weeks. Frogs often discover new ponds surprisingly quickly. Birds will stop by to drink and bathe, while beneficial insects begin establishing their own small populations. Rather than viewing these visitors as interruptions, remember that they are helping your pond function more like the ancient systems that inspired it. One of the most rewarding aspects of a backyard food pond is how it changes your entire garden. The surrounding area often becomes greener and more productive as humidity increases and beneficial insects become more common. Vegetable beds located nearby may require less frequent watering. Fruit trees can benefit from improved pollination, and natural pest control becomes more effective as frogs, birds, and predatory insects settle into the landscape. Another lesson from traditional gardeners is to avoid relying on chemicals whenever possible. Harsh pesticides can eliminate not only harmful insects, but also the beneficial species that keep the ecosystem balanced. Likewise, excessive chemical fertilizers can disrupt water quality if they wash into the pond after rainfall. Instead, focus on building healthy soil, encouraging biodiversity, and allowing natural relationships to strengthen over time. Maintenance is surprisingly simple once the pond becomes established. Remove excessive dead plant material before it builds up. Harvest edible plants regularly to encourage fresh growth. And occasionally thin out vegetation if it becomes overcrowded. Keep an eye on water levels during prolonged dry spells, and if needed, top up the pond gradually with collected rainwater whenever possible. Small, consistent maintenance is far easier than trying to correct major imbalances later. One valuable practice used for generations was harvesting a small amount of nutrient-rich pond sediment every year. After allowing it to dry slightly, gardeners spread this dark organic material around fruit trees, berry bushes, and vegetable beds. Rich in decomposed organic matter and beneficial microorganisms, this natural fertilizer slowly released nutrients while improving soil structure. It's a perfect example of how nothing in the system was considered waste. You don't have to raise ducks or harvest fish immediately to benefit from a backyard pond. Even a simple wildlife-friendly pond planted with edible aquatic species can improve biodiversity, support pollinators, increase humidity, and provide water for irrigation. As your confidence grows, you can gradually add more elements, expanding the system one step at a time rather than trying to build everything in a single season. Perhaps the greatest advantage of this ancient approach is its resilience. Every year your pond becomes more established, the ecosystem generally grows stronger. Beneficial bacteria multiply, plant roots expand, wildlife populations stabilize, and natural cycles become more efficient. Unlike many modern gardening solutions that require constant purchasing of fertilizers, pesticides, and equipment, a healthy pond increasingly relies on the processes already taking place within it. This is why so many people are rediscovering integrated gardening today. Rising food costs, unpredictable weather, and increasing concerns about sustainability have encouraged gardeners to search for methods that are both productive and environmentally friendly. The ancient backyard pond offers a practical answer. It captures rainwater, supports wildlife, grows food, improves soil, and creates a more balanced garden, all while working with nature instead of against it. Imagine walking into your backyard a few years from now. Birds are singing from nearby fruit trees, dragonflies glide across the water's surface, fresh herbs grow along the pond's edge, fish move quietly beneath floating lily pads, bees buzz from flower to flower, pollinating vegetables that seem healthier than ever before. Instead of maintaining a decorative feature that serves only one purpose, you've created a living ecosystem that provides beauty, food, and resilience every single season. The ancient gardeners who developed these systems didn't have access to electric pumps, synthetic fertilizers, or modern technology. What they did have was careful observation. They noticed that nature thrives through cooperation, not isolation. By connecting water, plants, animals, and soil into one living system, they created backyard landscapes capable of producing food year after year with remarkable efficiency. Today, that forgotten wisdom is available once again. You don't need to own acres of land or become a professional farmer. Every thriving food system begins with a single step, whether that's digging a small pond, planting your first aquatic herb, or simply designing your garden to work more closely with nature. Small beginnings often lead to extraordinary results over time. If this video inspired you to see your backyard differently, let us know in the comments. Would you build a food-producing backyard pond? And what would be the very first thing you'd grow or raise? We'd love to hear your ideas and experiences. If you enjoyed this journey into one of history's most productive gardening systems, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Daily Garden Gate, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next gardening guide. Every week, we uncover practical techniques, forgotten traditions, and proven growing methods that help you harvest more food naturally. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.